All right, gonna talk about BFRG. So anything I really traded, I did not really have the read on ZVSA or PTPI. Both tickers that I wanted to short, kind of your classic low float, you know, POS stocks, but I didn't have the read at the top and they just dumped straight down. Weak market, man. Like stocks could just pump 50, 80% in the pre-market and then just go down only, dude. It was zero bounce, down only. A lot of times, those straight up, straight down stocks, I'm not really in unless I have a really good read at the top. And I just miss those fades. So I got to trade this, choppy, manipulated thing. So, BFRG, it obviously popped early pre-market and had this big pullback. So I'm not looking to short any of this consolidation on BFRG. Just the range isn't really good, so there's some bullish factors of this, right? Like, first of all, like down here, the range is only like this was up like 25% on the day, so it always has some chance. Even a weak market, like 25% is not a lot. And not only that, on this, we can actually see some painted lower highs in the pre-market, and something we always learn is that a lot of stocks that show weakness near the bottom of their pre-market range tend to be strong, right? But usually what I like to see is I usually like to see a little dip, and then I like to see a bunch of bids on the book, and then have it rotate back up. Didn't really get that. Instead, we just got I was actually looking at PTPI and BFRG for a market open long, but what made BFRG so much better was the fact that it traded a lot more volume, right? You really need the market open long strat really works best when the volume is there and you have a bullish looking pre-market structure, right? You got a bunch of painted lower highs, all kind of, aggregated right next to each other. You have some empty space up here, and you have some weakness into the open, right? So it ended up just ripping on really good volume out the gate. And I just made the decision to long on the pullback into the 1 minute 9 EMA, right? From a book map perspective, I mean, the pullback has an empty the pullback's so violent that there's not a lot of orders to the upside, so there's it can rotate back up a lot easier, and a lot of times the 1 minute 9 is just the MA that it catches, and I just made a decision. I actually got in the low 3.3s, but this is a weak market, right? A lot of times in weak markets, a stock once it gets above the main levels, which are these lower highs, I was looking at 3.6. Um, a lot of times in weak markets, man, they just go for that one level and then they pull it. If this was December, this might have just uphalted, straight up and market open type thing. Um, but as soon as it breaks 3.6, you got to sell some. And then I held through the pullback. And I'm like, well, maybe it continue. And the book actually looked pretty good here. The book, there was a lot of bids on the book following this up. And I'm like, all right, let me just keep holding onto some of my position here. And then they started just dumping through the bids. And I just got out to protect some of my profits because I know it's a weak market, right? So as soon as those bids start getting taken out, I just get out. Now, I did short this. I thought this was so we got a quick dump, right? Here's a quick dump, right? So quick dump always creates a bunch of empty space, right? So, um, and it's like I said in the previous videos, you don't want to be shorting under VWAP. Like VWAP's right here, man. You don't want to be shorting these candles, right? It's very retail thinking to see a big dump and then to see VWAP hold as resistance and you get major FOMO and you try shorting down here. It's not where you short, man. Especially because we keep seeing that these quick dumps, even a weak market, these quick dumps, you could get rotation. So, I was telling my Discord, information down below in the description about the Discord, by the way. I was telling him, I was like, hey, it's probably fake VWAP resistance. This has decent volume in the play. BFRG is a rigged low float stock, and there's a bunch of empty space at upside, right? Like, wait for the push. I just waited for the push. And I think it's the book was really empty all the way up into these high 3.6s and low 3.7s. So I'm just, I'm looking at those asks, and then I'm just noticing how aggressive this move is, right? And I'm like, a lot of times these aggressive moves with a million higher lows don't have continuation, especially if there's no bid follow up and they run into, two, three, four layers of ass. So I just shorted into those asks on this little second push here. Um, it initially worked, but then we got the same problem where there's a lot of empty space, and I was risking these offers at 3.75 and 3.8, and luckily it double topped and pulled back, right? But what does that mean? If it double tops, that means you have one, two, three. So it's a triple top if you count this one. You have these painted lower highs, and then you have pre-market high a day, right? So um, you always have to factor in the paint. This is a 1 minute 200 cover right here, right? And I'm like, all right, well, it's a weak market. And also, I had an appointment to go to, so it's just like I set my stop loss, and I came back somewhere around here for my appointment. I was just like, oh, maybe weak market. It takes out these lows. It goes down here. But then we got this hyper crazy. This is like your classic little aggressive push, like these higher lows into a big squeeze. And I actually would have liked this big squeeze if it broke these lower highs, right? If it did like a liquidity swipe into like the 3.8s or even just high 3.7s and then kind of like Roma, go over my Roma video. I thought that might happen, especially because there wasn't a lot of bids on this push. Um, so I threw some on in the low 3.6s. I threw my covers back on. And then, what does that mean? That means right now there's four lower highs all at the same level. And this is just like AUVI, where when you get that many painted lower highs, below high a day, the reason this move happens is because of how painted those lower highs are. So I put my risk right in the mid 3.7s because I'm like, all right, this pulls back. I actually tried getting some covers down here in the 3.4s, and I actually didn't get any. And then, what do you call it? It wrote, I was just going to take a little bit off in case this, because I noticed the lower highs. I'm like, oh man, let me just take a little bit off. I didn't get filled. And then I just got rotated on, and really didn't lose a lot because I took a cover over here. And then, just like AUVI, it does its big liquidity squeeze, which, by the way, it's a weaker market. So a lot of times in a weaker market, once the liquidity squeezes happen, there's not a lot of continuation to the upside. We saw this with AUVI, right? Because if you think about it, they spent, 6 hours here, you know, building liquidity to make this move. And a lot of times that just means, um, unless like a million bids started showing up and the volume started getting really crazy and it started making, a lot of times the volume and the bids on the book will let you know what the odds of continuation are, but just factoring in the market conditions, it's unlikely. It's just unlikely. Now on AUVI, I shorted up here, and I just hesitated and didn't hit it, and I actually felt really dumb. I was like, wow, this is the same pattern as AUVI. Your big squeeze, your hyper aggressive bounce that stalls right below high a day, um, and I felt really dumb. But luckily, the 1 minute 50, 5 minute 9, which was like this MA right here. Um, it did my little fake 5 minute flag trap where it bounced right off of it, and it started bouncing back towards this 4 level, and I'm like, oh man, if it gets above 4, I'm just gonna instant hit it. I'm just gonna instant, especially I got this really nice second push right here. I'm like, I'm gonna instant hit $4, and I loved it. I just slammed the bid. It broke $4, and the second it broke it, I just instant market ordered into the bid, and I got an instant reaction. I love it when your thesis is so correct that you time like the top of the dump move. That's always the best. Doesn't happen all the time, but when it does happen, it feels great. And then this is another 1 minute 200 cover. And then I'm like, all right, let me just hold until end of day. This is like, this is a big liquidity move. This is a nice little long trappy price action at the top. weaker market. You know, you got like your MA, your 1 mid 200 down here, and then I just covered at end of day, and that's how that trade went. And you know, made a little bit on the market open long and that type of thing. So we'll go over the book really fast. So in terms of market open longs, this is BFRG, right? Yep. Um, so I actually just longed straight into. I saw this absorption. You see this little bid down here. Here's your market open push. I saw this absorption and I instant longed into this. I saw this rotate and I'm just like, right off the 1 minute 9. We zoom in really quick on a Think or Swim. Here's the dip into the 1 minute 9 down here, and I just long straight into that. You can see the volume come in 600k, 600k, 600k. It's good. It's good volume. Um, and you know, it's kind of like a little variation. I like it when it dips at market. You know, 931, 932, then rips. But sometimes stuff like this happens. You know, I really liked the lower high paint. You know, this. You know, this. You know, I really like that. And yeah, and then we'll go back to the book. If we zoom out, we'll actually notice here that there are a lot of bids following this up. You know, here's a bid, here's a bid. So also, you know, I took some at 3.6 because weak market. You just have to take some at the liquidity level. And there were a lot of offers up here, but there were a lot of bids down here. So it's a little bit ambiguous. I like the volume, and I'm like, well, let me keep holding. And then when it started selling off into these bids, I just got out. And we could see that empty space concept on the book, all this empty space to the upside, and we could see the bids come in to catch the stock. So this is the VWAP resistance. This is hitting VWAP, hitting VWAP, hitting VWAP, and big push. Not really a big push, but a push through VWAP. You know, let's go back to here. You know, here's your quick dump on 1.1 million shares of volume, and here's a VWAP rejection, here's a VWAP rejection, here's a VWAP, and I think this didn't reach this far down. This reached a little. I think this reached like maybe here. This is a single order. By the way, you'll notice on my chart that this candle ends at 3.75, right? Where your chart, it might end at 3.96. That is because that 3.96 was a single order. So what happens on single orders, guys, is that a lot of people use smart routes on their broker. And a smart route, what your broker tries to do is it tries to find different routes to get you executed, right? It's a smart route exists so you don't have to pick the route that the trade gets executed on, right? Now, some broker smart routes, for example, Trade Zero smart route is actually really good. It's very good at finding um, liquid routes that are close to the current price of the stock. But some brokers, and I had this with Centerpoint, um, like say you try to cover, let's say your stop loss, let's just say it's like 5,000 shares. It'll do like 3,000 shares at say 3.75, but then it'll do like 1,000 shares or 2,000 shares at 3.96. So like you get insane slippage on part of your order. And so if you get that, if that happens to you, and this has happened to me in the past with different brokers like Centerpoint, um, which maybe not really like their smart route. I think they have better routes other places, but I didn't really like their smart route. You'll get big wicks, and I had that happen to me before, where I thought I got executed at 3.75. And this, you know, I didn't get stopped out at all because my risk was right above. I got lucky, my risk was right above this. But I've had it where like part of my order got executed like 8, 10% above what I thought where my stop loss was. So that's why you see 3.96. This was not a high day clear out. It was a single order, and we could confirm that by looking at the book. Here's the book, and we could see that the book map didn't actually count that single order. It just counted the push to 3.75. So we can see right there, 3.75, 3.75, 3.75. It's our paint. We can see all the asks being stacked. And anyway, uh, it pulled back, it rejected. I covered some near the 1 minute 200 here. And then, yeah, here's your super aggressive move. right up here. Again, the 3.75. If we go to the book, go all the way over here, we can actually see that, that's the squeeze here. We can see that there's no bids following this up. And I saw the orders stacked up here. So as soon as it started stalling, I started shorting in the high 3.6s, right? Um, and yeah, it did one of those things where it got really thin and grindy. What sucks about when stocks get really, really thin, it's just really easy to manipulate a stock to go higher. And by the way, if you're wondering how did this squeeze happen, there's this big high day squeeze, right? Somebody threw up, and you can't see it on my book, but somebody right before this initiation right here, the market maker threw up 110,000 shares on the bid. So in this case, the bid is extremely bullish because of the lower high chart paint, right? So as soon as that bid showed up, all that you could see all this volume come in, right? All this buying volume just comes in. Because the rigger, used that bid to initiate the stock, right? Um, so some big lessons about this. So it squeezes high day. So like what, just like AUVI, what do you short, right? I always like to see the pullback. Most of the time, you'll have a you'll have support from all the shorts who are covering into the pullback, right? You have all this consolidation here, right? So on these pullbacks, you're likely to get, soaking. You're likely to have the MAs hold up. And I'm always looking at what the lower highs are doing. So I'm noticing a lower high at 4, another lower high at 4. So I'm like, cool. Um, the short is above $4, but then it got like really spready, and I super hesitate. Especially, I love this. Here's your initial 4 break. You get a pullback, and you get a second push. I always love the second push. I don't know why. A bunch of people in my room hit this. I don't know why I didn't hit this right here. But luckily, um, I just hesitated. It was spreading, and I hesitated. I talked myself out of it. But here we could see the 5-minute 9, 1-minute 50. We could see the support. See the support. I saw this rotate, and this hits $4, and I'm like, all right, if I get a second push above 4, I'll just insta short it, which is what I did. I shorted this candle, which if we go to the book, you could see. Also, I like that there wasn't a whole lot of bids, even though there wasn't a lot of bids earlier, but I still like the fact that at this point in time, I liked all the ask up here. You could see the layers and layers. You can see tons of layers of ash show up, so which is always really nice. And then not a whole lot of bids. I like the 5-minute 9 flag. I shorted it. It went down. So, I covered some down here on the 1-minute 200, and I covered some at a day. So, I actually went AFK, and I came back, and it was down here. I was like, great. What was interesting about that end of day was apparently some guy was flashing 170,000 shares on the ask, and then like 110,000 shares down here. So he was kind of pushing it down, and then I just covered. Into here. So yeah, BFRG, interesting play. Kind of little AUVI replication with the lower high paint and with the big liquidity squeeze. Biggest lessons here is in a weaker market, once the big liquidity squeeze happens, there's often not enough liquidity to keep pushing us up. Lower high chart paint, always bullish, got to be careful. I set my risk right where the lower high, if those lower highs got broken, I would have got, my stop taking out, so I'm not getting, executed way up here. And yeah, nice little market open long. You could see even here, there's lower high chart paint, weak market open, good volume, and I just made a decision along into the 1-minute 9 on this pullback here. So that's BFRG. Hope that was helpful and interesting. And yeah, it's funny. This whole move is only like 50% or so. It's not even that big of a range. But this is a lot of times if you didn't get stuff like PTPI. This was. I saw this push. I actually tried longing this push, but it went up. I actually there was they were throwing up a bunch of bids here, and I tried longing, but I didn't get filled, and then it went straight up. And then I thought, oh, look at the volume, 450K. Like this is gonna, it's gonna bounce off VWAPs, like set some type of structure, maybe hold up. A lot of times these stocks that pop at 9 a.m. I made an old 9 a.m. pop video. What they hold up in the market open and then they dump into the market. This just went straight down. And ZVSA classic awful stock. Again, 600, 700K candles down here. Straight up, straight down. This was on. Also, this was on SS. I thought this was on SSR. I thought they were gonna bring it under VWAP and rotate it back up. Do one of these bad boys, and maybe like so you get a bunch of shorts to chase. You soak under VWAP for 20 minutes. You rotate it back up, and then the short becomes like up here somewhere. I thought they were gonna do that. It went straight down, so I wasn't in this play. Wasn't in this play. I also wasn't in on whatever that IPO stock that went down 80% today. God, what was it? Roma. So this is some insider dumping. I'm usually not too good with like. There's a lot of shorts out there who are really, really good about forming theses about insiders going to dump 80%, and I'm going to look, I'm just going to short the pop and play the 80% fade. Some short sellers are really, really, really smart about understanding, special lockup periods and who owns what shares and how many shares they can dump. And there's a lot of money they've made in that. I just can't. I'm decent at fundamentals, but I just can't wrap my head around it. It's hard to know exactly what day is going to do something like this. So, anyways, that's my comments on that. So have a good one, guys, and I'll see you tomorrow.